Are the rules of how the mind works. That's what we're going to do for the rest of the day, is getting the mind to be our perfect servant rather than our master. So, what are the main principles of how the mind works? I kind of short circuited a little portion of our last section, but I'm going to go back to it right now because I think we all need a creation story. And very popular in the Western culture is the Garden of Eden story. So that Garden of Eden was the representation of life as perfection. In the Garden of Eden, humans had it all. They had anything that they wanted. They were living literally in paradise. Now, even in paradise, there's some rules. And as the story goes, God said to Adam and Eve, there are two trees in this garden that I want you to pay special attention to. The first is the tree of life. Look at how beauteous it is, how fecund, how full of fruit. This is the tree for you to live on. It's called the tree of life. You are what you eat. And so if you're eating from the tree of life, you are life itself. You keep regenerating life. You have life as long as you want it. It's like right there for your taking. And over here is another tree. It's also very beautiful. It's called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now admire this tree. This tree is very intricate. It is gorgeous in its way, but don't eat from it. Do not eat from this tree. As I said, you are what you eat. If you start eating of this tree, then you're going to start thinking you're good and evil. Then you're no longer in innocence. So the tree, to me, represents the mind. The mind is in our garden, and the mind is there for us to enjoy. But there's something else in the garden, the snake. And the snake is the only animal that can't go backwards. Once it's set in motion, it goes on that path. And that represents logic. So the snake encounters Adam and Eve and says, hey, you think this garden, this paradise you're in is top stuff? You ain't seen nothing yet. You can see a whole other way of life. Eat the apple. A whole nother way of life. You mean it can be better? It's not okay the way I am? No way. Eat the apple and you will see. Now, you say, well, okay, that's an interesting story. What does it have to do with my life? Listen, this is happening all the time. I mean, you think your life is good now. If you drive a Studsmobile, boy, you will be living. Look at how sleek this car is. Get out of the slumming life and drive the Cadillac of perfection. Oh, you think you are attractive? Brush with Gleep. Then you'll really be attractive. Whoa, sex appeal. Woo! So, in other words, advertising is telling us all the time that we're not okay the way we are. But if we take that trip on the Disney cruise, or if we get this higher education degree, then you'll be respected. Then people will look up to you and they'll listen to what you say. And they'll actually think it means something. And so logical syllogism, as it's called, which is the way logic goes, it's got a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. So the major premise runs the show. Once you accept the major premise, then the minor premise and the conclusion follow. Major premise: you're not okay the way you are. Oh, but if you do this, you'll be okay. Do this, and now I'm okay. I got that home in the suburbs, or I got that, whatever it is. The snake in the grass, though, is the one selling that major premise. That major premise that said, you are not one with God. You are not okay the way you are. You do not have perfection. Look in the mirror. That'll tell. Well, once you eat the apple, sure, you look in the mirror. Oh, crow's feet. Chipped tooth. And so we're doing it to ourselves all the time. We can't blame the snake. You can listen to the snake, you can read the ad, you can buy the product, you can do whatever. It's your choice. But look out about what is slipping you the bill of goods, that you are not okay the way you are, and that you will be okay if you invest in my Ponzi scheme, whatever. So, of course, we know the story. They ate the apple, and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm naked. Naked, not okay. Fig leaves, okay. And so they, in a sense, banished themselves from the garden, from living in that sense of perfection. Now, the story goes further than that. There's a way back in. There's a way back into the garden. That is having to get past the angel with the flaming sword. That is the sword of truth. So that once you start telling the truth about yourself and about your life, you can gain entrance back into that state of, I'm okay and you're okay. Or how do we start telling the truth about ourselves continuously? This is where we've got to take charge of our own mind, because our mind is picking up information from, and it's creating this thing called our identity, our ego. Oh, you live in that kind of a neighborhood. You eat this kind of food. You have this kind of parentage. You have da da da, and that makes you. Yeah, the mind is derivative. The mind is not the source, and the mind is continually living in terror of being discovered and banished. You know, the jig is up. Often, like an animal, a dog, if it has no controls on it, if it has no directions, it's very nervous and it's like running all over, chasing its tail. You have to take command, not by being hostile to the dog, but by being very clear. This is where you poop, this is where you eat, this is where you sleep. Our mind is like a dog. And it's important for us to know how to handle the mind in a way that it starts to feel safe. When the dog knows what the boundaries are, when the dog knows that it's going to be fed regularly, it's going to get enough sleep, it's going to get, calm dog. Now, fetch. Oh, yeah, I love to fetch. And so, what are the guidelines now in training our mind? Knowing how the mind works.